give just a brief introduction about Rosalind, our speaker. She's the founder and managing director of Arcadia Fine Foods, and she's a lover of both food and culture. And today she's going to talk and present this topic, which is restoring our harmony with nature. Okay, without further ado, Rosalind, I leave it to you, the virtual stage, and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Giacomo. And thank you, big thanks to TICC for kindly inviting me to be part of this. It's a great honor, and I'd like to thank again your continual support of the activities that I do here and there. So today I'm going to be sharing with you the topic, restoring our harmony with nature through food stories and experiences. And while this has always been my mission, it seems ever more important in current times as we realize what actually can happen when we don't protect nature. Sometimes nature loses its ability to protect us too. So I'm going to be sharing with you how we can restore our harmony with nature, but through the very particular modality of food stories and experiences. So we're going to try our very best to keep this webinar to an hour, but I know that sometimes discussions can get quite engaging, so we're a little bit flexible. During this 1 hour, I'm going to share with you a little bit about my journey to Arcadia, the goal of my mission, the problem that it seeks to solve, and the solutions. And then I'll go into some case studies of how I've experimented with restoring our harmony with nature through stories and experiences. We'll have a Q&A at the end where you can ask what you would like. But first, I'd just like to do a very quick poll. There's a chat box which you can just type your answer into. I'd be very curious to understand in our audience today, what is well-being for you? What does it mean? How is it manifested? Okay, so a little bit about Arcadia. What is Arcadia? It's actually an ancient Greek word. And you may ask, why on earth have you chosen an ancient Greek word for your business in Asia? So this word actually came from reading a book, I think 25 years ago, called Brideshead Revisited. And in it, there was this word Arcadia, and it always mesmerized me. So I looked it up. And the definition really resonated with me. It refers to an ancient, like, mythological place where life was said to be perfect, simple, peaceful, happy, and in harmony with nature. And really, this is kind of the feeling that I would like anybody who has an interaction with our company to feel. I want them to feel transported to this place. Even if they're in lockdown in their tiny condo, they can still go to Arcadia. Our mission is restoring our harmony with nature, but I focus on the word restoring with an ing because I really believe that it's an ongoing process. It's an ongoing and iterative process to restore our harmony with nature. And when I say nature, it's also not really just about the environment. It's about our own personal nature as well as nature more broadly. And in fact, my fundamental belief is that our personal nature is the most important to connect with first, and then the others, the harmony with the outer nature comes naturally. What do we do as a business? Well, we tell stories, we curate beautiful products in line with our vision. We offer educational courses on natural foods and beverages, and we create experiences in this vision as well. In terms of stories, some of you may know I have a column in Bangkok 101 called Kitchen Backstories, and that explores the stories behind the food that we eat and drink. In Bangkok 101, it's more about Thai ingredients. But we also, I work with a very talented cinematographer friend of mine to create small films as well for clients who want to tell their story. So what's my journey to Arcadia? Well, the journey actually started many, many moons ago. Actually in the original inspiration for Arcadia, which was here. So this was me, probably around 1 year old or something, in the backyard in our house in New Zealand. And that's our apple tree. And in this backyard, we had apples, we had lemons, we had guavas, we had feijoas, peaches, apricots, anything you could actually imagine. So I think when I came up with Arcadia, that was actually what I was remembering, that very joyful childhood and connection with nature right in my backyard. And life in New Zealand was very connected. We would run barefoot through the grass at school. We'd sit on a hill at lunchtime and eat our sandwiches as like the birds flew ahead. So it was truly an idyllic childhood. And fast forward, let's say 36 years in this picture. Fast forward 36 years, I was the Associate Director of PricewaterhouseCoopers Sustainability and Climate Change Practice. I co-founded and led this practice, I think over the course of 8 years. I was at PwC for 11 years as a management consultant, and 8 of those years, the majority of my time was providing sustainability consulting services to the biggest companies of Thailand. And in the last 2 years of my time there, we actually advised the largest food and beverage companies of Thailand and Southeast Asia. So it was an incredible time, and I'll always value it. And I have a feeling my former regional boss is on this webinar as well. It was such an incredible time because we had the very unique opportunity to stand in boardrooms, speak directly to CEOs, boards of directors, owners, and help to shift the needle, even the smallest bit in a better direction. So I loved that time. But it was I had a seminal moment in 2016 when I realized that while I loved and appreciated and valued that work, there was something greater that was calling me. And a big part of this was thanks to Italy, which also explains why I have a great relationship with TICC. So in 2016, I was called to London to the global sustainability practice to do a workshop or something. And I took a segue to Tuscany. And there I met some incredible winemakers, food producers, and people who are really at the top of their game in food and wine, but also very connected to nature and connected to people, and had a respect for the terroir from which they produce their products. They also showed me that experience showed me that there was separately a different way of being. I was very much used to a very corporate life, and fast-paced, very structured, everything's business. This showed me there was a different way that I could have a living and also live life. So it was an important moment. And 6 months after that, I put in my resignation. I didn't have a plan. All I knew was that I wanted to be returning back to nature somehow. I wanted to follow food and wine and culture and nature, and also answer that bigger question of mine of, like, you know, in terms of sustainability, what's missing and what's the missing piece. So I went to Italy, I studied wine, I traveled the entire country for food. And here, this is the graduating class of our wine class in Palazzo Antinori in Tuscany with Master of Wine, Philip. So the key takeaways of my journey was that the drivers behind this business was I was wanting to return to an idyllic childhood in nature. I wanted to fulfill my passion, but also fill a gap in the world, in the global discussion on sustainability and well-being. So onwards to the ultimate goal, the problem and the solution. For me, what I kind of came away with after 11 years in management consulting was the goal is well-being. No matter which way you're looking at it, no matter what activity you're doing, at the end of the day, consciously or not, the goal is for well-being. And that's the goal that is the greater guide to what I do as well. So at this point, maybe we can have a look at the poll. What have people mentioned so far? So we've got well-being as a state of mind, where you're at peace and ease with your mind and body. Well-being is a state of alignment. Okay, very interesting. So it's very actually metaphysical. It's not actually about, not about things. Some other people might talk about more tangible things like time spent with family or health or a good mood or something like that. But I think we're quite aligned that ultimately it's in our minds. Now, what's the problem? The big problem that I'm trying to solve is the same problem I was trying to solve in consulting as well. That is widespread socioeconomic and environmental challenges. Now, the fundamental assumption that I have as to why this is the case is there is an imbalance, there's a disharmony in nature. And that's the nature of yourself as well as broader nature, as I mentioned earlier. And while that sounds very abstract, I think a very easy way to understand this is thinking about yourself. On those days, those weeks where work is so tough and you've got a million things to do and you begin to feel really tired and you've got a bit of a scratch in your throat, but you push through and you keep going and you finish the task. You ignore those signs that your body is trying to tell you. And then 2 days later, you have a cold or you have a flu and you're out of action. So that is a very simple example of when something is out of balance and it creates a challenge and discomfort and ultimately a lack of well-being. The solution, you'll be remembering this phrase forever, I think, restoring our harmony with nature. For me, it's a truth. It's not even an assumption, really. It's when things are out of balance, there's challenge. When they're in balance, it's literally in harmony. And the method at Arcadia is to share knowledge and meaningful experiences, which may seem a little bit unconventional and unorthodox. Why? The question is, why am I choosing this modality to restore our harmony with nature? Well, first of all, I'm a bit of an introvert, so I'd be terrible as an activist. And I have a terrible green thumb, so I can't plant trees or anything like that. But what I do enjoy is actually sharing knowledge and sharing stories and experiences. The other thing is that, again, I quote literature here. This is a poem from T.S. Eliot, British poet, writing during the Great Depression period. And he said, "Where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information?" So here, life I shall take to be life lived in well-being, so life lived in the fullest. And what he's saying here is that we have lost our ability to live life to the fullest in full well-being because we've lost the wisdom, we've lost the knowledge, and we are only at information. And this could be no more true almost 100 years later. He was very visionary at the time. There tends to be a focus, and particularly in this day and age with a lot of information technology, a big focus on knowledge and information. But how often is this knowledge and information questioned as to why? Why are the actions that have been taken? Why do we want to know this knowledge? What use is this information really? What is the North Star for all of this? And what T.S. Eliot is saying is that we've lost the North Star, and through losing the North Star, we've lost the ability to live life to the fullest. It's a bit deep, this webinar, not quite the normal food and bev. So this is a little framework that I kind of came up with. It's based on an existing model. It's based on T.S. Eliot, and it's also based on my own thoughts. And it kind of summarizes what I was saying earlier, that ultimately in this model, well-being is at the top, is the ultimate goal. And that life, which is represented by traveling up this pyramid, is a process of building understanding and building context to the point that wisdom is attained. And it starts from information, so it starts from assembling discrete aspects of information, connecting them, creating concepts, and then using this information to then interact with it, get to know it, form the different parts of information to a whole, and begin to build a framework. The framework, then you reflect on that framework and the meaning systems within it. You join it with other frameworks, and you then have a paradigm. You have a system of thought, a way of looking at the world, a way of understanding the world. And I've highlighted here under knowledge emotional as well, because this is, again, a part of knowledge that we tend to not give as much credence to, whether in the education system or in the workplace. Everything is very left brain and you know, all about logic and numbers and tangible things. Of course, there are leading organizations and, you know, amazing thought leaders out there who do recognize that, but in the general normal world, there's a little bit less emphasis on the emotions. And how to get there is, again, restoring our harmony with nature and through stories and experiences. So, So what the pyramid really represents is the continual and iterative process of processing the world around you. And that, I believe, can be really accelerated through storytelling and having people go through experiences, taking away the purely intellectual approach to understanding things and beginning to create a more immersive way of understanding the world. So the key takeaways, well, well-being, or life with a capital L, is the ultimate goal. Feel free to disagree with me if you like as well. There's a general over-focus on knowledge and information rather than wisdom. And this over-focus leads to incomplete or poor decisions, which I think are then at the root of imbalance. Because when you have a fuller wisdom, you'll make better choices because you know that it's the right choice for yourself and others. But yeah, in this case, we are lacking that pyramid at the top, which leads to disharmony. Stories and experiences can shift the focus towards wisdom, so thus restoring our harmony with nature. And it can be applied at the individual and also macro levels, and also all fields of industry. So here I'm going to be talking about my business, but I really believe that it can be applied to every business and industry. So now to some of the case studies. So this is a scene in Chiang Rai at one of our nature retreats. It's actually more like a natural food, wine, culture, and nature retreat. Before we go into that though, how do they map onto this framework? Well, stories are kind of more at the level of information. There's no direct experience of whatever is being, the story is being told of. There's products, of course, that takes you one step forward because you're consuming the products. There's courses because you're learning from a teacher, you're engaging with the material, but it's still pretty much in a room. And then experiences, which takes you out of rooms and into communities, into nature. So first we have the story of Crystal. This is a couple of minutes long. And we have actually the great honor of having the producer of this wonderful product on the webinar as well. Crystal, this is actually one of my absolute passion projects. Crystal is a beautiful product that is made from kaunio sampong, which is a particular glutinous rice native to the north of Thailand, organically grown as well, and it's distilled into some beautiful spirits, which we'll see shortly. Before we go in that, I'd like you to think about what knowledge will you or do you gain from this short film? Knowledge or other things?
The philosophy behind creating a spirit is to leave as little as possible of environmental impact, keeping the equilibrium of nature in mind. So we use organically grown raw materials, we use naturally foraged botanicals and herbs. In all three products we want to show our philosophy, which is use the best biologically grown raw materials, handcrafted, wildcrafted botanicals and herbals, and traditional methods, love and passion. We aim to share every part of what we create with the persons that were involved in the process of creating it, from the grower all the way. You will put more focus, you will put more love into the process, and that will transcend into the product at the end of the day. This is what makes your product special and stand above the rest. The power of nature, natural agriculture, about growing things in a organic way. All those things we have always been trying to capture and put into our product. And that is the idea of Crystal. That was the guiding idea. That was what we started out from the beginning, and we have followed through until now. Distilling is more than a job, a profession. It's a labor of love. It's a passion. It's all about being passionate about walking into that chamber where the machine sits, the pot still, and it's slowly humming away, and it's the fragrance. It's that incredible feeling that you are just creating a spirit. As the name says, it's more than just a liquid, it's a spirit. And this is the spirit of the passion that I want to share with everybody.
So that was an example of, a story. Any thoughts? You can type your message. Any thoughts on, before you watched this film, you didn't know, well, some of you knew it very well, but some of you didn't know it. What did you learn, or what did you gain from the experience of watching this film? So we have an answer from Mimansha. She says, shows that following your passion can take you anywhere, which eventually leads you to the apex of personal well-being. Yes, well done. So that's again, a very metaphysical answer. But we also learned a lot about the product as well. So let's have a look. We gained a lot of different types of knowledge from that story. We obviously learned intellectual knowledge, so we learned product information. First of all, some people may not know that we have quality spirits being made from organic local ingredients in Thailand. We learned through watching the whole thing, we learned the process behind the product. Before engaging in this project, I didn't have that knowledge, so it was incredible to see that whole process from the farm and the herbs right through to the end product, and actually even a cocktail. We learned the values and the philosophy of the producer, and we also learned how to use the product a bit as well, right at the end. Emotionally, we we got inspiration, kind of along the lines of what Mimi was getting at. We also got the feeling of the product and brand. We got a sense of its character. And we also experienced probably our own personal emotions, whatever they were. So that story kind of gave rise to some emotions. That in itself is an interaction. So that's stories. Moving on now to products. And I call this section Friends of Friends because this is, products is one part of our business. I think going forward, our focus is more on courses, education, and stories. But we do curate a small portfolio of amazing products by incredible producers based here in Thailand. And I call it Friends of Friends because I always see this part of the business as me selling the products of friends to other friends. That's how I like to see it. It's not a trade. It's an introduction of friends through food. So I'm just featuring here three of those producers. This is Dustin. He's the founder of Left Hand Roasters, and he does artisanal coffee, which is sourced from Chiang Rai and Chiang Mai and the highlands of Thailand. This is Kunarut, who some of you already know. He was also on this great webinar series last week with a great presentation. He is a mad, passionate chocolatier and like chocolate maker, sorry. And he is very passionate not only about making chocolate, but also supporting the livelihoods of the Thai cacao farmers that supply his beans, and his chocolate is impeccable. And we have here also Cha. She's the founder of Hatch Goodies, and Hatch Goodies has an incredible mission also. Her focus is on Thai heirloom rices. So some of you may or may not know that it's been documented that in Thailand there's over 20,000 varieties of rice, and only about 3,000 of them are actually growing, either being cultivated or wild. And so therefore it goes far beyond the jasmine rice that we're all familiar with, or the rice berry that we know about. So she opens your world also to different incredible rices and the regions and the people behind that as well. So this is just a quick look at the raw ingredient and the product and the person. This is Kunarut of Shabai. This is Kuncha of Hatch Goodies, and Cha also does some incredible salt as well. Earth salt, I think was the word, but don't quote me on it. And this is Dustin and his product there as well. So again, I ask you a question. We've seen what we can learn from a story. What knowledge do you gain from consuming products? Welcome any answers from the audience. Okay, while people are thinking about what to write, I'm going to move forward and share that these are some of the things. So depending, and this is a good point for producers as well, product information. Some producers or producers don't put very much effort into product information. They just slap a general label on it and out it goes. But it's a massive lost opportunity to actually tell the story and distinguish the quality. Emotional knowledge. If you're eating chocolate or rice or that great coffee you just saw, then it's likely going to be joy. So you realize that these products give you joy. That's your emotional knowledge. And you also have physical knowledge. So you have sensory knowledge now. So instead of just seeing the product, you've tasted it, you know its texture, you know how it interacts, in your mouth. You may have raised energy from consuming it. You may have the beginnings of wisdom. So you have a starting point to apply your knowledge to explore other types of coffees or explore other types of rices and compare them. And you probably by now have a greater appreciation of that product as well. So we have a couple of answers here. We have, it depends on the product. Yep, it definitely does. And a product is more valuable if I understand the story behind it, how it's sourced, what's involved in its chain of production, and also the land and culture it comes from. Right. So these things you would learn only if the producer actually put some effort into the packaging. So moving on to number 3, which is courses. So this takes us further up the pyramid to something which requires interaction or an experience of some sort. So Cucinino is, again, every project is favorite, but this is one of my favorite projects. It's an Italian cookery course, but it's aimed particularly at passionate home cooks. And that's for 2 reasons. Passionate because I'm very conscious of curating people who are really actually passionate, because it's very infectious and it creates such a nice vibe when everybody is loving the same thing. And home cooks because, and we started this before COVID, like I think in October last year. Already in October, I had a feeling, I have always had this feeling, I love cooking at home as well, but I have a growing feeling that it's really important to cook because I think cooking can solve all world problems. Well, not all of them, but if you can grow, if you can cook and you can share what you cook, the world is pretty much taken care of. And related to that, there's another brilliant quote which I saw somewhere where it said, "I don't seek to feed the world; I seek to feed my neighbor." And I think that's a very profound quote, because it is basically saying if you take care of the person next to you, everybody's taken care of. And cooking at home, cooking yourself, gives you a tool to do that too. So here are some scenes from one of our classes. Our classes are very, I'd say, terroir driven or geographically driven. So we started with the south of Italy. We started in Sicily. I think then we went to Puglia, we went to Basilicata, and then I think this is Campania. And this is a collaboration with a fantastic chef called Chef Gabriele Tottoluna of About Eatery. He's also somebody who's just full of joy, passion, and a willingness to share. Great chef as well. And he's kind of our expert for these classes. And we learn not just about like a pasta, but we learn about the region, we learn about the context of that food, the customs, the ingredients, why something is used and why something is not used in an Italian context. So it's a very fully rounded cooking class. So here we're making scialatielli, I think, right, Giacomo? Which is a classic dish from Campania region. It's pasta with basil inside it. And here, Gabriele is...
Mantecare is the way you saute the pasta, no? And then we saute like this. You can saute also like this. Then when you do this...
Yeah, so that's Gabriele showing us how to mantecare. And it's such a great opportunity to be side by side with a chef and learn these little tricks and tips that you wouldn't really get the full value of from a YouTube or something like that. So
mantecare is
so same question. What do you think students gain from participating in this? We have a question from Michele, which we'll answer, I think, maybe towards the end, because we have another experience as well. All right, so again, we have different types of knowledge, but the list is growing now. We learn in one of these classes, we learn about culture, we learn about ingredients, culinary knowledge. We learn about now people, because we're interacting with people, whether it's the chef, the host, or the other students. We have emotional knowledge. We have the knowledge of human connection. Again, we have our own personal emotive responses. We have physical sensory knowledge from the food, the new types of food, different foods that we never had before. We have culinary skills, so our knife skills improve. And again, we have the same beginnings of wisdom, a starting point to apply the knowledge and value. Oops. So this is a really beautiful story, and thank you to Pauline who let me use her lovely photos. So in one of our first classes, we had Pauline's husband Peter join us, and he really enjoyed the class, such that that day he actually went straight to the grocery store, bought all the ingredients, and he went home to teach his daughters and make dinner together with his daughters for their mother. And that really, for me, that's success actually. Like my KPI is something like that happening, where something that happens within the experience then expands to another sphere and creates additional bonds and additional connection and additional knowledge. So it's kind of like a beautiful cycle. So here they're making casarecce from Sicilia. And it's actually very finicky, so it is difficult. But he does a really great job just after that one day of class, and I think his guests are happy with the result too. And these are some examples from another student who also had a party not long after that and made this dish from Basilicata, which is lagane ceci, a very ancient pasta recipe, I understand, and also pizza rustica, which is a type of pie. So incredible that 3 hours spent created additional joy and more knowledge. Okay, so we're nearing the end now. So the next experience takes us even further up the pyramids, and indeed to the highlands. And this is one of our nature, I haven't come up with a name for it yet, but it's basically a nature retreat, but also celebrating natural food and wine and culture and general well-being as well. So this is a view from Chiang Rai, where I spent quite a lot of time last year. Beautiful, beautiful vista there. And what you see is a lot of coffee plantations, but also general forest and some integrated farming as well. So integrated farming meaning that the farms are actually in the forest. They're not monoculture farms. It's like you find kale in the forest type of thing, and that's planted by the local tribes from the Aka tribe. Before I show you what the experience is, can anybody guess what this might be? I don't think you will. This is really funny for me because when I was working with big corporates and sustainability, we would always talk about, oh, stakeholder engagement. We're telling these big companies, you must do community engagement. You must engage with your stakeholders. But I'd of course done it at some level, but I'd never really done community stakeholder engagement at the really local level. So this was my first ever meeting with a village elder on the mountain from the Arcadia Hill tribe. And we were there to chat about how we could work together to create this project together. And so that, I was driven far up a mountain, and then in the middle, just before everybody arrived, there was a big blackout and there was no electricity and it was completely pitch black on the mountain. So here the Puyai Ban is lighting a candle to illuminate our meeting. So this video and a slide after this will show you again in film what happens at one of these retreats. It's only 1 minute. glimpse of what happens. You would have seen we actually had the great honor of having Top Chef Thailand, Chef Tham. She's the winner of season 1. She came up to do a chef table with us using all the local ingredients from the property that we're staying at, and we did an incredible natural wine pairing with her food. But the main thrust of this retreat and the main focus I want to create from this retreat is that engagement with the community on the mountain, because they have an incredible knowledge of nature that we as city folk have absolutely no idea. So they can walk into a forest and know exactly, like, oh yes, we can use that plant for a cut, or that branch over there actually makes a great curry, or, you know, incredible things. And we also saw plants and vegetables we've never seen before in our lives. So it was an incredible eye-opening experience. And we did a later retreat actually with my dream clients. They were the senior management of a public company in Thai, publicly listed company, real estate company based in Bangkok. So we had the chiefs of business, the CFOs, the CMOs, the this, that, and the other. They actually came, 17 of them came for one of these retreats. And as with any group, of course, the impact's going to be varied, but there was definitely a large number of executives that were fundamentally changed by this experience. They were sitting on the wooden floor of a aka hut with a wooden mortar and pestle, and, you know, making this Highland chili paste from herbs they just picked themselves. For them, that was a very different experience from their usual jobs. And that's exactly what I wish to kind of increase in my activity. I'd like the people who hold the power, the people who hold the capital in the economy, to be exposed to how the majority actually of people actually live. And they were coming up to me and saying, oh my gosh, I had no idea. These people are so smart, and they're so lovely, and they're so, you know, enthusiastic. And I want to bring all my friends and get them to experience this too. So there's an economic impact of that too, because it then creates greater livelihoods. But for me, it's the empathy between the high-powered executive and the humble, but they don't need to be described by that. But and the archive village person sitting together, and the archive person actually teaching the big executive how to do something which they do not know how to do. So for me, it was a really beautiful and profound experience. And this wasn't in that video, but I just wanted to show you, this is an example of a very particular dessert. It's a dessert, but it can also be eaten as a savory dish. It's kind of like a mochi of the Highlands, made from glutinous rice and steamed glutinous rice that's pounded, and it's extremely hard work.
แรงมากเฉพาะไม้ก็หนักแล้ว
Okay, and then this is everybody getting their go.
You try. Oh, I'm gonna try too. We all want to try. Oh, you're fine. No, you try. Oh, you first. You first. Do it. We're gonna. Okay.
And, what's funny is that this also links to culture, because they were sharing that men in the tribe are expected to know how to do this and to do it well and come up with a good product. And we were all asking, oh, why? And they said, well, because they won't get a wife if they don't. So the reason is that in their culture, they make this food for special festivals and feasts, and it's always a duo. So the man will make the rice, and the woman will use the sesame, black sesame seeds. They'll prepare that, so they have to work as a team. And if the husband can't do that, then they're not really helpful as a husband. Or that's what they said. And then they also giggled about something else, which I won't say here. All right, so again, same question. What do you think participants gain from this experience? As we're running, I don't want to take up too much more time. I'm going to go straight towards the takeaways. Again, intellectual knowledge about food, beverage, culture, lifestyle. Now we're bringing that in. We're also bringing in knowledge of the forest and of farming. Still have the human connection and emotions, but maybe another nuance is empathy between the urban people and the rural people, understanding what they can learn from each other. Still all the physical knowledge and wisdom, I think here has another nuance too. Because of the multidisciplinary, multidimensional nature of the retreat, the understanding now becomes a bit multidimensional as well. So you begin to connect the dots between different activities and knowledge. And you don't just have one starting point for further exploration, you have a multitude of starting points for continued exploration and movement up the pyramid. And of course, greater appreciation and value, no doubt. Okay, and now we come to the last case, and then we'll move on to our Q&A in a little bit. So this is my new project. Actually, we always wanted to go online, and this was even before COVID. What's interesting is that when you think about online, you don't tend to feel like you're going to get much of an experience because you're talking to a box or like you're looking at a screen. But what's funny is that COVID has shown us that in fact you can have an experience just like the one that we're having now, and we can actually have even richer experiences in some cases because we can scale quite easily as well. So this is going to be what I call a discovery program. And it's degustation, like degustation, but it's D like the Thai word D as well, which is good. And what it seeks to do is help you discover good tastes and good tastes. So it's the terroir driven, so very similar to the Cucinino project. I'm really a big believer of terroir and all that it encompasses. So not just the environment, but the people, the traditions, the methods, the actual earth and the land and the plants that are grown there, even animals too. So I would like to basically offer a different way of discovering wine and also food, one that is terroir driven, because I would like people to make that connection much more strongly. Right now, there's a lot of things out there, but it tends to be quite postmodern in its approach. So you'll be like, oh, let's learn about sparkling wines or red wines or sweet wines or this, that, and the other. But there's not the emphasis on the terroir. So this is going to be a focus in this online experience. So this is actually one of my actual photos of a winemaker friend of mine in Tuscany. And well, the way that it will be structured is that it will provide obviously some textual context to the wines, but again, talking about the region, the culture, the history, the grapes, the terroir, and also, importantly for me, they will also look at food of that region, because traditionally, particularly in the old world, the food and the wine came together. And this is often ignored, or it's not ignored, but people don't put emphasis on it. And I would like to put emphasis on it. And it will provide recipes or things that you can make that are simple, again, focusing on home cooking, not Michelin star cooking, things that you can replicate very easily at home that reflect the culture and the essence of the place that you're discovering. So I'm also right now working with winemakers and wine professionals to provide the interactive elements to this as well. And most importantly, we will curate the wines for you. So everything comes as a package. You'll have a wine subscription together with an online interactive learning program as well. So the first session, the first one, obviously, is going to be Tuscany, because I have a great affinity to the region. But I also think that while many people would think that they're familiar with Tuscany, actually there's much, much more to be discovered. And that's the part that I would like to help to uncover as well. So this is still in development, but we're looking to launch this course in next month. Okay, so I'll answer this one for you, but I think that actually, funnily enough, the takeaways are not so different from the real experience. You'll still get the intellectual knowledge, clearly. You'll get the personal connection and personal emotional response from it, because there'll be an interactive element to it. There's definitely going to be a sensory element, because we'll be providing you with the things that you'll be tasting. And again, multidimensional knowledge and understanding, and many points for further exploration, because we will basically keep traveling, and we start with Italy, but you know, we have the rest of the world to explore as well. And back to your point, Nikki, at the beginning of this, before we started this program, you were talking about how it's a shared interest of ours to maintain Thai knowledge and wisdom as well. So there's potential for this to also go back to my own home as well, and culture. So summary is basically this wonderful pyramid. And I think if you can't remember anything else, I think the main conclusion of all of this is that wisdom will help you make better decisions to enjoy a fuller life. And we help you to, from our own dimension, we help you to accelerate your way up that path. Okay, so that's it from me for the moment. Let's have a look at what some of the Q&A are. Giacomo and Michele, how would you like to do the questions? Should we just go through them?
Okay, so Michele, you can go ahead.
I can bump into the conversation. So what we did during our webinar, we can either going back to the first one. So probably, Rosalind, you saw that some of the attendees was defining well-being after your invitation. So somebody said, well-being is a state of mind where you are at peace and ease with your mind and body. And also from Patricia, she said, well-being is a state of alignment. And probably need more explanation. And Kun Mimansha Joshi, she also added, following your passion can take you anywhere, which eventually takes you to the apex of personal well-being. So this is probably the first question that we have.
Yeah, great. And then I think you actually had a question as well, which was before the COVID-19, we noticed a rising interest in resorts that offer a full experience, blending together food mindfulness courses. Will this trend increase, and do people need to learn again what good food and well-being is these days? I think that the answer to both is yes, for sure. I think that I'm not alone in recognizing that there's a greater need to connect the dots, and a greater need to go back to well-being. And it was already there, but now COVID has also intensified it. In terms of resorts, that's an interesting point, given the situation. Not sure. Right now, I think the industry is still kind of reeling from the effects and figuring out how they can actually operate resorts to do this. But I think that if it's small groups, there's ways to get around that with the right precautions. Yes, they do definitely need to learn again good food. And it's even not learning again, it's just learning, because some people have never really been exposed to incredible food, and they settle for the things that they know, which is very often food from the convenience store that has a lot of preservatives or additives and things that are not very good for you. So this is why I think experience is so important. Like the knowledge and information is important, but the experience is important. And again, you know, I have great respect for Italy because I think, you know, your country really, really has this respect, like compared to many industrialized countries, and you're much more connected, in my view, to the land than many others. And there's a respect for food. So I think we really need to work on that. And that's where stories and experiences come in. So I think we have another one from Varda. So she's saying, I was wondering how you can extend Arcadia's values or teaching to the wider Thai community. These items may not always be accessible to most of the population. How can we make this wisdom more accessible and perhaps applicable to a wider community that can be shared and embraced within their livelihoods? I think that's a really good question. And it's clear that the things that I am offering are very much limited to a certain segment of society. But, well, it's also because it's what I'm passionate about. So it's kind of matching my passion, and by coincidence, it's within this segment. But I do not forget about the bottom of the pyramid. And this is why, as I was saying, I really want to focus on the people who are at the top of these massive organizations that actually hold a lot of sway in society. My approach is a bit different to address the bottom. It's changing at the top so that the bottom will eventually, you know, be shifted. But at the same time, I think right now my business is very small, and it's a small SME. I would love to be able to do this with schools, with, you know, local communities and things like that. But for that, I think that it's more of a long-term plan, a long-term play. And in the medium term, it's really about trying to get the people at the top power to realize something a little bit different, so that the things that we do end up with in convenience stores are actually maybe really good for us. Okay, we have another question. Regarding the Michelin Guide and the top-notch restaurants available in Thailand, do you think that the proposed menu and dining experience are fitting with your ideals? Very interesting question. Oh, I think that I summed up my own philosophy earlier in the presentation about cooking. I love cooking. I'm passionate about it. And I really believe it teaches you a lot about yourself, as well as the ingredients that you're working with. It creates connection with people who appreciate what you make. So I think that home cooking is, for me at least, that's the way forward. Michelin Guide and all that. I think, I mean, it's not to say I don't enjoy fine dining, because it's enjoyable to do now and then. But I don't think that that's my emphasis, and I think that an emphasis on self-sufficiency and also personal knowledge, personal experience, that's my game, and I really want to kind of push that more so. Yeah, I think that would be my answer. Another question. Do you see organic and bio products as a trend, or as an awakening for the people in this area? Oh, that's a very deep question. I actually think that it's part of a much larger movement for awakening, as you would say, because we're now beginning to experience the results of previous actions, and the results of those previous actions, whether it was by this generation or the previous generation, are now impeding on our well-being. And it's impeding on our well-being to an extent that it's uncomfortable. I think before it wasn't so uncomfortable, but now it's getting very uncomfortable, whether it's in terms of your own personal health, or you're seeing it on a much larger scale, like in Chiang Mai with the pollution, and sometimes Bangkok as well. And clearly, you know, the current situation is kind of related to our disrespect of nature in a way. So yeah, I actually think that it is an awakening, but it's an awakening that's arising from a very logical feedback loop of our own actions. It's karma on a large scale. Any other questions?
Rosalind, maybe I can have another one. I would like to ask you, since you were talking about also about mankind, nature, and now you mentioned also karma, what do you think? Do you believe that probably moving diet to vegan or vegetarian is actually better for the environment? And also a few weeks ago, we were also talking with an expert of insect food as alternative way of collecting proteins for human diet. About these topics, what is your idea in a framework of a global civilization?
Great question. Very interesting one. You know, I love plant-based foods, and there was a time that I actually studied raw vegan culinary school as well. So I've actually been certified in that. So I think that it should be applied to everybody. My personal opinion is that it shouldn't necessarily be blanket applied to everybody. I think that eating more plants is obviously good for you, so that can be encouraged. But when we're moving towards like no meat at all, I think that, again, this is a very narrow view, because, you know, especially when you're working with food culture and, you know, all the kind of cultural links to food, by eliminating meat, you're eliminating culture as well. You're eliminating, you know, centuries and centuries of tradition and wisdom and, you know, knowledge and experience and sensory knowledge. So I think that's a bit unfair to just say blanket no meat. I do think that we should eat more vegetables, so eat in proportion, maybe more vegetables. But I don't believe in a blanket elimination of meat, because it's food, as this whole discussion has been about, is so much more than just sustenance. It's a link to your previous generations. It's a link to wisdom that used to be rooted in nature. And, you know, meat production hundreds of years ago was probably a lot more sustainable than it is today. So I think, you know, you've got to also question, what kind of meat are you talking about? Are you talking about mass farmed, hormone-filled meat, or are you talking about that wonderful pig that lived a happy life eating acorns and came to its end in a relatively peaceful way? So I think that people need to look at the greater context and assess their opinions within that greater context. Your second question actually was related to bugs, right? So yeah, I think that's an interesting development. What I was in that discussion as well, and I think that it's nice to actually have an alternative protein that's maybe a bit more sustainable than you know, big meat. But what surprised me a little bit was that it's not yet cost effective. So I think already it's a little bit of it's a bit difficult at this point in time to convince people to move to that kind of protein. But it will make it even more difficult if it's expensive. So, but I think maybe that's because he's just at the beginning, and I think over time there'll be economies of scale, costs will come down. But again, I think my same principle applies: everything in balance. And I think for his business, the stories and experiences, I think, will be very, very important as well, if that's going to become a viable substitute for big meat.
And Rosalind, okay, we have another question popping up.
Yep.
So before in the video, we saw the use of banana leaves to pack the food. Which is your position regarding plastic and biodegradable bags and packaging?
I think for the current state of the world, for the most part, it's an unavoidable evil in some cases. I think that the recent movement to encourage cloth bags and taking your own bags to the grocery store, that's a great kind of shift that happened quite quickly. A nice shift in the mentality, and I really support that as well. But you know, when we're gonna have this kind of packaging, as long as we have the producers producing them as well. So, and we're gonna have, we need to have alternative producers of packaging come up as well, so that they provide an alternative, viable and cost-effective solution to such packaging. We can try to reduce as much as possible, or we can send a message to the people who produce it. But I think we're waiting for innovation. But innovation is happening. There are leaf plates that I've been seeing popping up here and there. There's, you know, interesting things being done with pineapple leaves and all sorts of things. But there'll be a big, I think, lead time. Like it's an R&D lead time before we'll actually see those alternatives. Because, you know, if we just cut it tomorrow, you know, well, how would we actually operate? You know, it'd be quite difficult to have, where would you put your meat or things like that? So maybe though, maybe I'm being a bit pessimistic. Maybe all we need is just a bit of inspiration and a bit of creativity and innovation and attention put on these matters, and perhaps something will come of it. So yeah, necessary evil, but let's create a space to put our attention onto alternative solutions that are viable.
Okay, that's good. Rosalind, I see the other participant, there is also Dario. He's producing Italian gelato. Have you ever think also to do anything with gelato? Because you have chocolate, remember, from Italy, wines, and all other kind of organic and very nature products.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I love gelato. I'm a big fan of it. I think that the challenge with me is that I'm quite small, and I am focused actually on products that are ready to eat and don't have like storage requirements that are too complicated. So while I will probably certainly become a customer of the gelato, in terms of my actual portfolio, I'm keeping it quite simple, and it's a very small curated portfolio of products, and it will probably stay that way. Yeah, so while I would love to, I think like for my own company, probably will keep to the more dry products or easily packaged ones.
Okay, thank you very much. There is one more question from Michele. Michele, maybe you want to ask?
Yes. Just coming to my mind by watching at your presentation, Rosalind. So we saw that in Europe or United States and Australia, you have tours with wineries and food.
Yeah.
So we have also amazing movies done related to this subject.
Yep.
And I was thinking, like, by living in Thailand so long, do you think we can apply a certain similar pattern to attract local tourism, also foreign tourists, to follow this similar activity? Because also Thailand is very rich about food culture. Perhaps, of course, wineries is not the topic, but what do you think about this, especially now that we saw that with COVID-19, we won't see many tourists approaching Thailand sooner, and perhaps could be an idea to involve more of the local community in traveling into Thailand.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, that's kind of the main thrust behind why I'm doing what I'm doing as well. In the audience of my customers, we have 50% Thai and foreign. So there is definitely a market already amongst Thai people to learn more about Thailand. And in particular, I like to choose obscure places. So like within Italy, we go to Basilicata, or within Thailand, we go to an Akha tribe on a 1,200 meter mountain. So it's my thing to like help discover things that should be discovered but are currently unknown. And it's not really just about the knowledge as well. It's about the experience and the empathy and all those things that we discussed. It's a very holistic tour. It's not really a tour. I have to come up with a better word for what I do, but it's a multi-dimensional immersive experience. That's what it is.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rosalind, for sharing. So we appreciate.
Thank you so much for offering me this amazing platform. It's been amazing to be able to chat and exchange with you as well. And thank you for coming up with this entire webinar series, which is absolutely genius. And I've really enjoyed all the other speakers so far. I look forward to the next ones as well.
Okay, that's good. And I don't know if there are other questions. Otherwise, we can conclude here this very interesting webinar with Rosalind. I don't know, any other question?
I have one thing actually. I almost forgot. So if you want to contact me, you can find me on Facebook and IG at Arcadia Fine Foods, same address. You can drop me an email at info@. And I forgot to mention, big thing, I'm actually launching a new website. So it's not going to be arcadiafinefoods.com because I decided that in the end, Kitchen Backstories describes what I do a lot more. So Kitchen Backstories will be my main content channel, but also e-commerce shop as well. It's still in progress, but it's softly launched today. And then also for anybody in this webinar, Hatch Goodies, Kunchav Hatch Goodies, and also Narat Bar have collaborated with me to offer TICC members discount on any product of their heirloom rices or the artisanal chocolates. And also for the degustation course that's coming up soon, that's an introductory offer for anybody who wants to give it a go. It's 50% off as a kind of gift to TICC members, but only 10 people. So just let me know. Use the promo code Friends of Arcadia because by now everybody here is a friend of Arcadia. Friends of friends.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rosalind. We would like to invite everyone to follow also on your social media and to have a look to your website. Okay. Michele, maybe would like to say something?
You and Rosalind wrap it up very well. So I'm very, very happy also to have Rosalind with us today. Of course, for all the participants, keep following us and we will come up with other webinars still about food innovation. And stay tuned. We are activating, as you know, the YouTube channel where you will find other webinars about the same series for food innovation. And of course, for anything else about business and any doubt, you can also contact us. We're happy to share also the information of Rosalind in case you could not save it now. We're very happy to liaise with every one of you. And I think that's all. So Rosalind, again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, everyone.
Grazie mille. Thank you to everybody who joined from around the world as well.
Thank you. Virtual hug and hope to see you soon once COVID is ended.
Sì, a dopo tutti.
A dopo.
Ciao.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye. Stay safe. Happy weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.